just copy the link and
Right,
so
sir.
God bless you. I may not really stay on the call like that. I have quite a number of assignments too. And I also need to rest kind of. Yeah, that's great.
I understand. All right. I'm waiting for the link.
Okay, class is live. And I think once we have people coming in, we can start, sir.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining in. Kindly stay on as we await others to join.
Brother Festus, kindly make me a host so I can share my screen. A co-host, rather. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We're still waiting for more people to join in so we can continue from where we left off last week, maybe by 7:05. We'll see how many people are there, and then maybe we can start by then. Hopefully, you guys attempted this assignment. Uh, so I can see the live chat here, so I can monitor your questions and your concerns from there whilst we wait for more people to join. Even during the class, if you have anything, any question, you can drop it there and I'll attend to it right away. So our assignment was basically just to help you guys get familiar with data types in JavaScript. Right, data types, and as name insinuates, right, data types are just the different forms with which we store data in JavaScript. Some are stored as text, some as numbers, some as booleans, and by text, what we call the programming term for text is string. Right, it's a string. Once we wrap it in these quotation marks, it becomes a string. Right, so we have string types, we have number types, right? We have Boolean types like yes or no, or rather true or false. We have arrays. Arrays, a list of variables. So if we have a list of names, that is an array, right? A list. So that a list of names is an array of strings, right? It's an array data type because it is a data type that's multiple values. And as we discussed last week, it could be different types in the array, right? It could be different types in the array. Then we also talk about objects, which are values that are saved with key value pairs. right? Or it's a value that has properties consorted with key value pairs. Yes, so it's an object is a data type with multiple properties that relates to each other. So an object most likely describes the shape of something. We talk about how we can have a human object or a student object, right? And then we can have properties like is it male or not, right? Is male. When it is false, it means that the person is female. If it is true, it means the person is male. And we have other ones too, which are also Boolean values like has BSc. So this has BSc is a Boolean value. When it is true, it means the student has BSc certificate. When it is false, it means they do not have BSc certificate. We have the same thing for has MSc as well. And then university is a string that holds the value of the university that the student attended or university students are attending. And then we have age, which is a number. And it's a number because, like I said again about numbers, is that we save data in numbers when we need to perform numeric when we need to perform arithmetic calculations with them, right? If we need to perform any kind of arithmetic operation on a value, then we save it as a number, right? So I give you examples of numbers that might not be saved as numbers. And an example of that is your password, your PIN, right? PIN are numbers, right? Password has number and letters, but PIN is usually numbers, right? But that data type would not be saved as a number. Why? Because there's no point with which, or there's no point at which we will perform any arithmetics on a PIN. There's no point where we're adding 1 or adding 0 or dividing it or multiplying a PIN. No, we only save the PIN and we'll compare it with whatever the user types in. So when you go to your bank and you collect an ATM card, they ask you to go and set your PIN in the. Some people use POS, some use the ATM. Right? Some people they'll put your card into the POS and ask you to type in your PIN, while others they'll say I should go and set the PIN on their ATM outside. Right. So when you do that, what happens is that they save the PIN that you type in, and then the next time you want to withdraw or make a transaction online, they will ask you for that PIN that you typed to show that you own the account, right? Now, that PIN that is saved, what I'm saying is they will not save that PIN as a number. Why? Because there's no point where we perform any arithmetic operation on that PIN. The only time when we need that PIN is when we need to check it with what you are typing in. So when I go to a POS to go and withdraw, and I type in a PIN, the POS will fetch my password that I set initially and compare it to the one I just typed. So what they do is comparison operators. Let me see if we did something like that here. We didn't have that here. So I can write a quick one for us to just have a look again. Okay, this is it here. This is it here. All right. So this is the PIN. Let me increase my brightness, my size rather of my text. So this is the password you saved when you created the ATM card. And then now that you want to withdraw from a bank or from an ATM, you put your ATM card inside the machine or the POS device. And then what happens? You type your PIN. So this is PIN you now type now. So what it does, the only thing we do with password or PIN is that we check if the typed PIN, we compare it with this double equation mark is what we use in comparing. If you remember comparison operators, right? I sent you guys this note, so hopefully you went with them later on. So comparison operators. So this is double equal to when you use like this, we are comparing this value and this value if they're the same thing. So that's what we are doing here as well. We are checking if the typed PIN is the same thing as the PIN we saved earlier on when you created the ATM card. Right? If it is the same, then this code block will run, the first code block will run. Then, as long as we use else as a keyword for the second code block, it will run if it is not the same. So if it is the same, we continue with the operation and withdraw the money. Whilst if it is not the same, this code block runs, and what it does is that it tells the user that they have incorrect pin, and then maybe they might even say 3 trials left, because if you try to withdraw without the ATM card and you get the pin wrong 3 times, then you are probably not the owner of the card, right? So that is the security measure they do as well. Right, but this right here is controlled flow, right? We talk about control flow, if and else. There's also other ones like else if. So if, let's say, we have a scenario where there's multiple outcomes right now, if and else only covers 2 scenarios, meaning that this typing is equal to a safe password, then this runs. If it's not, then this runs, right? But we might have situation where we have more than one outcome that could happen based off of our flow or our logic, right? So let's say okay, so let's say we are at a gathering. We're at a gathering, right? And then they are asking for, or let's say we need to buy tickets. We need to buy tickets for a table, right? We need to buy tickets. So let's say there's table of 2, there's table of 4, and table of 8, right? They each have different prices, right? So let me create that here. So instead of using different variables, I can choose to use an object here. So I can say let's tables objects, and I'll say table 1. Sorry, table 1. The price is let's say, okay, table of 2 rather. So I'll say table of 2. Table of 2. Sorry. The price is 200,000. 200,000. And then table of 4. The price is 150,000. And then table of 8. The price is 100,000. So these are the tables that we are offering at this event, right? There are 3 tables. So now when a user makes a payment for any of these tables, right, we want to reserve the number of seats, or want to reserve number of tables we have right now. So let's say we have tables, right? Now let's say we have reserved tables. So reserved tables will also be an object, right? Sorry, I'm using the wrong syntax here. So reserved tables and objects. So we have table of 1, table of 2, and table of 3 as well. Now, okay, here they are. So now, what do we want to do? What do we wish to achieve? Sorry, can anyone else see my screen very well? Try increasing the resolution of your video. If you can see my screen, right? If you can see my screen, remember to increase the resolution of a video. If you can see my screen, and to come out better. All right. So now, every time a user buys a table of 2, we want to add one number to this variable or to this property inside of the reserved tables. So by the end of the sales period for tickets, we can know how many table of 2 we will have in the event, how many table of 4, and how many table of 8, right? That is what our job is here. So how do we go about this? Now, we can use is and else. We can use is and else, if and else rather. We can use if and else to check how much is being paid. And based on that amount, we'll know if it's table of 4, table of 2, or table of 8. Now, let's say we have users payments, right? Sure, let's go with that. So let's use prompt here. Let's use prompt here. Can we use prompt? Okay. Yes, we can. Okay, so let's say um let users payments. Okay, so no, this will not be a very good one. Anyways, let's keep going. I'll show you what this is doing. I'll show you what this is doing when we load this on our code. All right, so we have the user's payment, right? So now what we'll do first is I will console.log it. All right, so now let's open this on our code first of all and see how it comes out. So I'll come here, FSM, I'll open this. So now I received a question after last week's class asking about how to run the JavaScript. Now, the JavaScript, it is connected to your HTML, right? So app.js, if you remember last week, if we open index.html, you see that we use this script tag to import our JavaScript code into this HTML. And that's how it works, right? You use the script tag and then you put the path to your JavaScript. That is the where it is, the path, meaning where the file is located. It's located under the same directory. So I can just put the name here and it work. So put the path to your JavaScript code here like this, and then you open the um you open the index.html code on your website, and that's how it loads JavaScript. So when I open with my browser, you can see this is our prompt asking us to enter the amount for the table. So let me zoom in here a bit to see if it gets bigger. It doesn't get bigger. So this prompt says enter the amount of money you want to pay for the table. So as you can see here, that's what our prompt is. So prompt is a native JavaScript function or method rather. It's a way of receiving information from a user. It's almost like a form input, as you can see, like a form input to type in, but it is different from input. But this one is JavaScript, 100% JavaScript, right? This one is controlled by JavaScript 100%. So I will say 100,000, and then I'll press OK. So if you remember last week, we didn't put anything in our HTML file because we wanted to um, make it less. Sorry, I typed the wrong function, console.log. We didn't want it to disturb us on our JavaScript, we make it black so it doesn't disturb our eyes. So let me zoom in here a bit more so you can see everything. I will close all of this. Okay, so let's continue. So we have our tables, we have the inputs. Let's see what the inputs looks like again. When I refresh this page, I'll see the inputs here asking me to, the prompt asking me to type in how much I want to pay for a table. So I'll say 100,000. When I press OK, you can see your payment is 100,000, right? So now let us go and use this to write our flow. Now, based off of how much the user pay, I want to reserve a table of 2, a table of 4, or table of 8. You understand? So what I'll do then is I'll say if users payments, so the user's payments must either be for table of 2, table of 4, table of 8. If not, we want to refund it, right? Let's just stick with this flow or this logic for now. It's not a very robust one, but it works. Right. So now we have all of these prices here. So now I want to first check if the price, if the user payment, we'll make it into a number. Right now it is a string. Right now it is a string. So if I console.log, let's check what type it is. Remember the method type of. So this will let me know if it's a string, if it's a number, or if it's anything else. All right. So I'll go back. I will refresh. I'll type 100,000 again. So it is a string, as you can see. And now our payment, our price object, right? Our tables object has numbers, not strings. So I can convert this to a number by using parseInt, right? So now I am reassigning this variable to itself after I've made it into a number. So this parseInt will take in is a function. A function takes in a parameter. Think of functions like machines, like machines. Let's say a grinding machine, for example, a grinding machine, you put in tomatoes and then it grinds it and gives you the blended version, right? That was functions. So functions they perform an action, right? And most times they take in a parameter and then they will now return the value. So whatever is returned from here will be saved to this. So what this function does is that it takes in a string, right? And then it turns it to a number. So by the time we are at this point, let me show you what it would have done. By the time we are here, at first it will be a string, and then after we have done this operation, this one will now give us a number. Right. So let me see. Let's see what that. Let me see if that works before we move forward. And this is a great way to build applications or to build websites when you're writing JavaScript, especially. Right after you should be testing what you're doing whilst you are doing it. So don't just write out the whole thing and then start testing later on. It is a very good practice to write a part, test it, and then write other part as well. So you know that what you have been doing so far is reliable. So I'll say 100,000. When I press OK, you can see that the first one is a string and second one is a number. And the only thing that happened in between those two is that we changed users payment into a number. So now we can compare the number with this number and we're sure that nothing will go wrong. You understand? That is why we converted it to a number. So I will say if user payment, so I want to check all of my tables is if it is the same, if it is equal to tables.4, I will log you have paid for the table of 2, or rather, let's use an alert. I paid for table of 2. So I can then say reserve tables. Now I want to add one. I want to add this table of 2 is currently 0. I want to add 1 to it since user just paid minimum payment for it. Right. So I will come here and I'll say reserved tables dot tables table of two plus plus. Right. So with this, I will add one to this value. Right. So before we move on again, let's test and see if this works. So I will console.log reserve tables. So let's see if we are doing this correctly. So I can remove this now. Well, it's okay, I can leave that one. Okay, let's test this and see what we have currently. So what's the price for a table of two again? Table of two is 200,000. So I'll come here, I'll type 200,000. And it says, look at this page says you have paid for the table of two. Okay. So our tables, you can see now table of two now have one instead of zero. It means a payment has been made for table of two. You understand? So what is happening here, just to recap, is that we are receiving users, we are receiving input using this prompt, right? So when we receive the input, we log it to the console, the type, which we don't need anymore, to be honest. Right. So we convert it first. We convert it to a number because this function only receives string. We convert it to a number and then we check if the number is equal to table of two. If it is, then we alert you have paid for table of two, and then we add one to table of two. So now there's one we have booked one table of two. So when the event planner wants to arrange the tables in the event, it will now look at reserved tables and know how many tables of two, how many table of four, and how many table of eight they will use. That is the whole idea of this that's the whole idea of this logic right here. So now, right, notice that we are only making a condition for table of two. What if the money they pay is for table of four or table of eight? We now have to write other else if block. So that is where else if comes into place. So I can say else the user payment, if the user payment is equal to tables dot table of four. Now we are checking if the money they paid is for a table of four. Right? If for table of four, want to alert them, you have paid for the table of four. In fact, let's use console.log rather. The alert is not very big, so some people might not see it. Also, if you have any question, anything you're not clear on, you can draw my attention back. Let's be sure that we are following and we are learning all of this. So I'm changing to console.log so that we can see it bigger on the screen. So now else if it is tables.4, want to log to the console, send the user that okay, you have paid for the table of four, and then want to add one to table of four. You understand? So and then we know that so if it is not table of four, they want to check if it is table of eight. And so we say that you have paid for the table of eight, and then we're adding one to the reserved tables on that table of eight, so that now we have our full logic for three of them. So if the money comes in, we'll first check first if it is for table of two. If it is, we send the user a message and then we add one table to table of two. If it's for table of four, we send them a message and then we add one to table of four. If it is for table of eight, same thing again. We send them a message and we add one to table of eight. Now, all of this might look like we have covered for all the scenarios. But what if they paid a wrong number? What if they paid 185K and it is not for table of two or four or eight? What happens then? That's what we now have on the else block. Right? Because we know that when whatever the user pays is either for table of two, or it's for table of four, or table of eight, or it is not for anyone. In which case, we want to tell them that you have not paid for any, you have paid the wrong amount for tables, right? You have paid the wrong amount and you will be refunded shortly, right? So when it is the wrong amount, they will be refunded the money. All right, now we have covered all the scenarios. So let us go ahead now and see what the logic looks like. All right, so let's open our console and let's refresh the page. So enter the amount of money you want to pay for the table. If I say 150,000 and I press OK, it says you have paid for the table of four. And then if you open the reserved tables, you can see that we now have one added to the table of four. You understand? So what happened was that the logic, when after you receive the prompt, we converted it to we converted it a what's it called? Um to a number from string to number, and then we check it for table of two. It was not table of two, so JavaScript skipped this code. Right? When the browser ran this code, it checked if the amount we paid matches the price for a table of two. It did not, hence it skipped this entire code and moved to the next else if condition. It then checked if it is equal to table of four, and it was. So it ran this code and skipped everything else. That's how it works. So when you see a code like this, when you see a code like this, else if, and else, only one of them will run. If the first one run, the rest will not run. If second one run, the rest will not run. If this first three does not run, if this one, and this one are all false, then by default, this one will run. So one of them here must run, right? So, and in our case just now, table of four was what end up being the right table of four ran. So that is how this control flow. Hopefully, this kind of helps your understanding a little bit more. Now, let's talk about loops. Let's talk about loops. If you look at this code very, very well, you see that we have to refresh the page to rerun the code again. So you have to refresh, and then I'll type in um, what's it called? I'll type in let's say I type in 100,000, and then I press OK. I've paid for table of eight. Table of eight is now one, but the value for table of four has gone back to zero. That's because we have to refresh our page to run the code again. Now, what if we want to what if we want to keep running our code until we have reached a certain amount of tables? Let's say we want to put at least 10 tables. Let's say we want to put at least 10 tables in the event. How do we make it so that this code by itself runs again 10 times, right? Or keep running until we have 10 tables? Because sometimes you just might pay the wrong money and then you don't add to a table. So you want to keep running the code 10 times. How do we achieve that? That is how loop comes into play. That's what we need loop for. Now, loops, they allow for repetition without writing the same code multiple times. So let's say I want to um, I want to write this whole flow without a loop. Let's say I want to do all of this without a loop. What will I do? I will write this, sorry, I will duplicate this code 10 times, 10 different times, right? So I'll take all of this code, even the prompt as well, even the prompts. Um, so I'll copy everything like this, Control C, right? Or even this one too. I'll copy it like this and I'll paste it 10 times. So I'll come here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let us do 5. So we can't declare this. So I'll just use the inputs. So if you use let, you can't use let again on the same variable. You can just reassign it um, directly. Now, what does let do? Let creates a space on your machine to hold that variable. So if there's already a space, all we are doing is that we are changing what is in that space. We're not creating a new space with the same name. That's why it is giving us this error. So if you copy the code, make sure you just delete the let keyword in it. So it is just all right. So we're good to go now. So let us see what it does now. That's what it does now. So when I refresh this, so the first one, let's say the first one is 200,000. Second one, 150,000. Third one, 200,000. Um, that is three, right? Um, fourth one, 100,000. And then the fifth one, it will be a wrong number. So I'll say 145,000. Okay. Look, my note was- Okay, this is the fifth one now. Okay, I pressed it 5 times, so that is six of them. So I'll say another 200,000. And that's it. So as you can see now, we now have a number of observed tables. We now have table of eight, one of it, table of four, one of it, table of two, three of it, right? Now, notice how I have to copy and paste my code 5 times to achieve this. And even this is still a less optimized logic, right? Because it doesn't keep track of the wrong ones. Now let's say I wanted at least six tables, right? I pasted my code 5 more times, meaning that I now have it 6 times. But somehow, because I typed in a wrong a wrong table, you can see you have paid the wrong amount. You'll be refunded shortly. Because I paid in the because one user paid in the wrong number. What ended up happening is that we ended up with only 5 tables. So, but wanted 6 tables. You can see how the logic like this can be um, inefficient, right? So let us try and make it more efficient using loops. So I'll delete everything below. I'll delete everything below like this. Everything below will go. And let's try and use loops for this. So let's say the number of tables we want. Let's say allow number of tables. So let number of tables. So there are different kind of variable naming convention in programming. There is snake case and there's camel case. If you have noticed, you'll see that most times when I'm naming a variable and the name has multiple words in it, I will start the first word with small letter and then the next word with the capital letter, and then after that also. So the first word with small letter will start it, and then subsequent words will be attached with the first alphabet being a capital letter. So number of tables. So normally it is number of tables. It is 3 words, right? In a variable name. Number and then of and then tables. If I'm writing this in camel case, I will start number with a small letter, and then I will start the of with a capital letter, and then continue small letter, and then the tables as well. I'll start with capital letter, and to be like this, number of tables. This is what they call camel case, and this is how you should be naming your variables. It is a best practice, a convention. Nothing will be wrong if I just name everything with small letter or everything with capital letter, right? It won't be wrong. It won't be wrong code. It will simply be not standard, right? So I have initialized the number of tables I want to 5. Now let's talk about loops. There are different kind of loops. There is a for loop and there is a while loop, right? And then there's a do while loop. Do while loop and while loop are almost the same thing, right? Sorry, hold on, let me share my notes. Hold on. All right. So let me zoom into this a little bit. So just to explain what loops is. Sorry. Um, so a loop, right? A loop lets us run the same block of code repeatedly, either a fixed amount of times or until a condition is met. And I'll explain why that is. So I said um we have three, in fact we have four kind of loops, but for this class we focus on two. We focus on for loop and while loop. Right, so for loop does what it does is that it repeats a code implementation, or it runs a loop a known number of times. So if you know how many times or how many tables you want, right? If you know how many tables you want, let's say we want 5 tables, right? And we know that we want 5 tables. We can run the loop 5 times to get a table. You understand? We can only find a table. But let's say the table are so many that we don't know how many they might be, right? We can use a while loop. And once we do that, we'll keep giving users the option to book a table as long as we still have table space available. So we have tables. So every time a user books a table, we'll remove one from the table space and run the code again until we don't have any more table space, right? So when we know how many times we want to run the loop, we use a for loop. When we don't know how many times and we are just running the loop based off of a condition, we then use while loop. So let's go deeper into this right now. So now we know how many times, how many tables we want 5 tables, right? We want 5 tables. Now, how to write a for loop? How to write a for loop? Let's get into it right away. Hold on. Okay, let's get into it right away. So a for loop is written like this: for let I is a variable. We save I to number of tables, or rather, I will be 0. I'll explain what I is or what this means, right? And then we'll say as long as I is less than, so number of tables is 5, it will keep going down. So as far as hold on, let me see how do we go about this now? Hmm. So want to run this 5 times, right? So as long as I is less than or equal to 5, right? Let's keep adding 1 to I. So let's talk about how this works. So now I is 0 from the start. From the beginning of the loop, I is 0. And then as long as I is less than 5 or I is equal to 5, do this and then run this code. That's what happens, right? So the first time, I is 0 the first time, right? Is 0 less than 5? Yes, we'll run the code and we'll add 1 to I. So after running the code, I will not be what? I will not be 1. Is 1 less than 5? Yes, it is. It will happen again. We'll add 1 to I. Then it becomes 2, it's still less than. It becomes 3, it's less than. It becomes 4, it's less than. It becomes 5, it's less than. It becomes 6. So it becomes 5, it's no longer less than 5, but it is equal to. So this still applies because this is less than or equal to. So when it is or, we just need one of the conditions to be true. So is it less than? It's not true. But is it equal to 5? It is true. So we say run the code. So this will run the code 6 times. First time when I is 0, second time when I is 2, third time when I is 3. Right, so first time when I is 0, second time when it is 1, third time when it is 2, fourth time when it is 3, right? Fifth time when it is 4. So if we want to run this just 5 times, we will say when I is less than, we'll remove the equal to value and we won't have put 5 here, we'll put number of tables. That's what we'll have here. So when I is less than number of tables, we'll run I plus plus, right? So if I is equal to, then this condition is no longer applied and then the loop will stop. Right, so let us just see how this works. So first of all, before we even put our code into the loop, let's console.log um, console.log this code run, right? I. So let's have this. I'll comment out our code for now for ease. Okay, so let us go and see what this does on our console. So when I refresh, you can see this code ran when I was 0, and then it ran when it was 1, and then when it was 2, when it was 3, and now it is 4, and then it stopped. Where is 5? It didn't run when it was 5 because 5 is no longer less than number of tables, which is 5. 5 less than 5 is false. So this code will no longer run. You understand? That is what happens. So we have this running 5 times. You understand? Now, instead of console.log, we could simply have our code like this. This entire thing, we can have it run inside the loop. Right, so we have successfully created a loop that runs our code for us. That runs our code for us 5 times. So instead of logging this like this, we'll just put our code inside here. And then what will happen is that our code will run 5 different times. Right? Our code will run. So what will happen is that the first time it will give us a prompt and it will run. So we want to run 5 times, exactly 5 times. So what this means is that we are giving users the opportunity to pay us 5 times, meaning we want to only receive 5 payments, whether the payment was correct for a table or not. After the first 5 payments, we're no longer taking any ticket anymore. So now let us see how this works. Let's go to our code and refresh our code. So we have our first payment. I'll say this one is 200K for table of 2, I believe. So it says you have paid for table of 2, and a table of 2 is now added, now has 1 instead of 0. Second one, I would say it is 100,000. Third one, I would say is 150. Then I would say fourth one is 200. And then the fifth one is a wrong, no, let's say 150 again, or 100 again. I can see it has stopped. It didn't give me my prompt anymore. So if you check now, we now have table of 8, 2 tables, table of 4, 1 table, table of 2, 2 tables. So now we have received 5 payments and all 5 were correct and were assigned to the appropriate tables. Right? So you can see how instead of copying and pasting our code 5 different times, we're able to use loops to handle everything. Right? We're able to use loops to handle everything. And this is what this is what um this is what loops, right, are good for. This is what loops are great for. Now, let's say let's say um let's say we don't know how many times, or let's say we're not aware of. Now let's say number of tables, right? Let's say it's zero at first, and want to keep adding tables. So as a user pays, we add one to the tables, we add two tables. So we're keeping track of how many tables has been paid for. Right now, this number is showing how many payments we want to submit or how many tables we want. But let's say instead of saying I want 5 tables after this has run 5 times, let's close the code. Right now, you know what happened. Let me show you the problem with this current um, execution of this logic. I'll show you problem of this logic, and then we'll show you how a while loop can be better for something like this. Now I will refresh again and go through this again. Let's say the first time I made a wrong payment of 201k, right? It happens to, let's say I made 20k instead of 201k, right? 20k wrong payments. And then the second user paid 150,000. That's correct. So we have our table of four booked. Uh, the third user paid 10k by mistake. If we want to add 10, and then what we'll have wrong payment, it will be refunded. The third user paid 200. The fourth user paid 150. Right. So okay, that's even five. That's five. So we needed 5 tables. That's why we started with number of tables as five. That's why we did this. We needed 5 tables. We needed this code to run 5 times to book 5 tables. But now our logic, when the user makes a wrong payment, we refund them back. So what do we have now? We now have a number table of four, two of it, table of two, one. So we have 3 tables and 2 refunds. So that's a problem because we wanted 5 tables initially. So with this, instead of using a for loop, we can use a while loop. So we can say let booked tables equal to 0, right? So instead of using a for loop, I will say while booked tables, right? So as long as booked tables is less, right, is less than number of tables. As long as it's less than number of tables, I'll say less than or equal to. Right. So the book tables can be 5. The book tables can be less than number of tables, which is 5. The book tables can be equal to number of tables, which is 5. But it cannot be greater than, if it's greater than, then it's not run anymore. So why it is less than this, why the book tables is less than number of tables, or why it's equal to number of tables, want this code to keep running. No, I'll move this equal to. So let me see. Yes. All right, let's see how this goes. You know what will happen? What will happen is that we will run this code. Let's test this and see how it goes, right? Let's say console.log this run, this code run, and then we'll put book tables. And then after that, we'll say we'll increase book tables by 1. This is important. So that it can keep increasing. If it doesn't keep increasing, we'll end up in an infinite loop where book tables is never equal to number of tables or greater than it. So this code just keeps running forever, and your machine can even shut down because of it. So now look at this logic. Now we're using a while loop. Let's see how this works on our code. So when I refresh this code, let's do this first. Let's just type in wrong numbers, all of them. So this can happen as well. Users can pay wrong number every time. It's possible. So we can see this code ran when book table was 0. It ran when book table was 1. When it was 2, when it was 3, when it was 4, but when it was 5, it didn't run. So what happens is that we now end up having um, the number of this runs 5 times, right? It runs 5 times because at the fifth time, it is no longer less than 5, right? So let's put our code inside here and see how it works. We'll make a slight change to our code and I'll show you where the change will be. So I'll come here like so. I will collapse them so I can copy them easily. Um, so someone said they can't see anything. Can you confirm if you're on the call, if you can still see my screen and if you can hear my voice and you're following through? Leave a comment so I can know that I'm live and you're hearing me. So just let me know. Anyone? Let me know if you can hear me and if you can see my screen. I'm looking at the chat box, so if you can hear me, please signify. If you can hear me and see my screen. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've seen a comment. All right. Thank you very much. So kindly check your device or your internet if you can't hear or see me. I think people can see me. Okay, so let's copy this and put it into our while loop and then make the slight change I told you about. So I've copied that. Let's this follow. I'll comment it out and paste it here. So this code like this, as it is right now, we are currently this is currently an infinite loop. Why? Because we're not adding one number. We're not increasing book tables in this code currently. So what will end up happening is that this code will run. It will check is what's book table 0, number of tables is 5. So is book table less than number of tables? It is less than it because 0 less than 5. That's true. Then this code runs, or this one runs. In fact, I forgot to copy in the um this one as well. Sorry. Okay. So the all of the code runs. This first one run, second one run. Then either one of these runs because this is a control flow, right? Only one will run, and then that's the end. We check again. Is book table less than number of tables? It is because why? 0 is less than 5. So unless we are adding 1 to this to increase it almost in reach 5, it will keep running. So every time a table was booked, we want to add 1 to book tables, right? So this first time, does this flow book a table? Yes, it does. It books a table of 2. So I'll come beneath it and say table plus plus like so, right? I'll do that. So the second if block, the second else if block, does it book a table? Yes, it books table of 4. So I'll come here and I'll put table book plus plus. The third else if block, does it book a table? It does. So I'll come beneath here after the operation and I'll add in book table. So I'm adding on the book tables. Remember, only one of these 4 blocks will run. So now this else block, does it book a table? It does not. This is how we refund a user when they pay the wrong money. So if they pay the wrong money in, no table is booked. So I will not add booked, I won't increase book tables here. I will not. So let us see how this code performs now, right? So you know what? At the end of everything, let me log book tables, right? Book tables. not reserve tables, book tables. Okay, so we have book tables logged. Let us test this out and see. I'll refresh the page to reload the JavaScript. Now the first payment, let's say it's 100,000. We have reserved one table, right? The second payment, let's say it is 150. We have reserved one table. The third payment, let's say it's a wrong payment of 125K. We can see the table is not changed. You have paid the wrong amount and you will be refunded shortly. And so our reserve tables remain the same. But it has run, it has run 3 times, right? So let's say the fourth payment is of let me say 200,000. 200,000. So we now have 3 tables. And then afterwards, the fifth one is of 150. So now we have 4 tables. Remember, our target is 5. Now look at our code. This is the first time the code run. Second time it ran. This is the third time. This is the fourth time. This is the fifth time. So it has run 5 times. But our pumps is here asking us for another table. Why? Because we have not booked up to 5 tables. So now instead of the code just running 5 times, the code will keep running until we reach 5 tables. Two different things. Instead of the code running 5 times repeatedly, the code will run repeatedly until we have 5 tables. So previously, if we had 2 wrong payments, we'll end up with 3 tables booked and 2 refunds, and our code has stopped. But now, if we have 2 wrong payments, the code will keep running until we have 5 tables. So now I want to add the last one. I would say the last payment was of 100,000. Right? Now it has stopped. So we have 5 tables. It's no longer asking for tables anymore. This is the importance of a while loop. So the if loop, it only runs a fixed number of times. We know how many times it wants to run, and that's how we run it. But a while loop, right? A while loop, it runs until this condition is now false. So as long as this condition resolves to a Boolean value of true, remember, comparison operators resolves to a Boolean value. So if you see a comparison operator being used, it's or a logical operator, it either returns true or false. You understand? So if book value is less than number of tables, or if book tables is less than number of tables, then this will say true. But if it is equal to, it will say false and the code will not run. So if this is true, then this code will run. If it is false, the code will not run. That is how this thing is structured, right? So you can see how the while loop helps us to have a more efficient logic. There are cases where we need a for loop and what with the while loop. Like I said, if you know the exact number of times you want the code to run, then a for loop is the optimal solution to go for. But if you don't know how many times the code should run, but you have a condition that should make the code keep running until the condition is now false, then you can simply write that condition into the while loop and the code will continue to run as long as that condition is true. Remember, in a while loop, you must make sure that the code affects the condition. So this code here, when the code runs, it adds 1 to book tables, and that affects condition. So it keeps adding 1 to book tables. Book tables keep increasing. So at a point, book tables will now be equal to number of tables, and this condition will now make it false. As long as we keep adding 1 to book tables, at some point, book tables will now increase up until, well, it is now no longer less than number of tables, making this condition false. That's an important part of while loop, because if not, the code will run an infinite number of times and it will crash on memory and your laptop. You have to off your laptop and on it again. all of your browser will hang, everything will hang, your code will hang, you can't do anything again. That's what while loop does. It's what is happening is that we are we are using an infinite number of memory, or your space in your laptop is being used up rapidly. Your RAM is being used up rapidly, and that will make your system to shut down. Your system will start making noise. Safe. If your system is not strong enough, the fan will start making heavy noise, and your system will start getting hot. Your laptop will start getting hot because of your while loop. That's how powerful this thing is. So make sure that you are you are incrementing the value, or you are modifying the value in the loop, so that the value that is being the value that controls the condition isn't being left unchanged, right? And ends up with an infinite loop. All right. So that is it for loops. That is it for loops. Now let's talk about functions. What is a function? A function lets you group code into reusable blocks. A function lets you group code into blocks that is reusable. For example, you see everything inside this white block. Like I said, a block of code is everything inside this opening and closing curly braces. So you can see this opening bracket and closing brackets, right? Everything inside is a block of code. Everything inside is a block of code, as well as this one as well. You see this else block? Everything between this purple curly braces and the closing purple curly brackets, everything inside is a block of code. Same thing as else if. Everything from here till here is a block of code. Now, this one is not reusable because it is written directly into the else if, right? It is written directly into the else if. But with a function, we can reuse a block of code multiple times. You understand? We can reuse a block of code multiple times. So now let us see how functions work. First of all, so to write a function, we simply write it like this. We say function, we use this keyword. There are keywords in JavaScript, there are special keywords in JavaScript, and the word function is a special keyword, while special. Um, which one again? Let special, for special. This word const special, right? This const is a special keyword, right? So function is a special. So this function is how you declare a what's it called? Um is how you declare a function, right? So I can say function say hello. Now say hello is the name of the function, right? So say hello simply logs hello, welcome to our restaurant. Right? Let's say this is a restaurant. So this is a function. So you use the function keyword and then the name of the variable. You put opening and closing parentheses. Right? These normal brackets are called parentheses. Opening and closing parentheses, and then you now open a block. You open a block and you type your code inside of the block. So now every time you call this function, this block of code will run. Every time you call say hello, it will run this code inside these curly brackets. So how do you call a function? You simply type the name of the function and you use this open and closing parentheses. This is how you call a function. So now if I go to my console and I refresh, what we expect to see is hello, welcome to our restaurant. You understand? So this is how we call a function. Now, if I don't call the function, you will not see anything there. right? Why? Because when this particular code runs, all it does is that it saves this block of code with this name, hello, hello, say hello. That's what it's doing. This is how you save a function or how you define a function. It's almost like this, like defining a variable, right? This is also a variable as well, but it has a special way of being defined, right? So you can see this is what it is, a function. So we use the keyword function, and then we type in the name of the function. We use opening and closing parentheses, and then after that we add a curly braces, and then we log CLO. This is how we run a. This is how we call a function. So here we're defining it, right? Functions definition. Define a function. Define a function. So this is how you define a function, and this is how you call a function. So I can say a function that says say goodbye, right? So function say goodbye. So camel case. Can I say I'm using camel case? The say is all small letter. The next word starts with a capital letter and then continues with small letter. The next word again starts with a capital letter and continues with small letter. This is how you write camel case. So say goodbye is going to just simply console.log goodbye. We hope to see you again. So now, if I go and refresh my code, you will not see, you won't see the say goodbye. Why? Because we didn't call the function. Right? So for it to say the goodbye, for us to use this block of code, we have to come below it and then put the name of the function and the opening and closing parentheses, like so, just like this. And then, right? So when we call the function like this and refresh, then we now say the goodbye function. So now let's look at our code here. What now? This is a function without a parameter. We can also have functions that takes in parameters, right? So I can add a parameter here called name. Called name. Now, name is we take now this function will now take in the user's name, right? So how I'll do this is that I'll use what is called string concatenation for this, right? I'll use what is called string concatenation. Now let's talk about how to add strings together. So now I have to say hello, the person's name, and then welcome to our restaurant. So it will be like hello Israel, welcome to our restaurant. Hello Festus, welcome to our restaurant, right? Hello Fidelix, welcome to our restaurant. That's what I want the function to say. Now, how do I put name inside of hello and welcome to our restaurant? I can use string concatenation. So hello will be here, and then I'll say plus name plus welcome to our restaurant, not party. Restaurant. Optionally, I can construct this above instead of below here. So I can take this and say const because it won't change. So I can use const. I can use let, but it won't change. So let me just use const. I'll say greeting. I'll call it hello greeting. Hello greeting. I'll say it's equal to this, and then I will log greeting. I'll log greeting. Sorry, not greeting. Hello greeting. Right? Hello greeting. So then, when I call this function, I have to pass my name into it. I will now say my name is a string, so I'll say Israel. Right? So when I call this function, because it now has a parameter, so the parameter in a function is being received in the parentheses. So this is the name. So now what this does is that when I call this function with this parameter like this, whilst it is being called, name will not have the value of Israel. So in this function, when you see name here, instead of putting this name like this, it will put Israel for me. So let me go to the console and see what it looks like. So when I refresh, you can see hello Israel, welcome to the restaurant. Right? That is what it does. So this name will take on the value of whatever is being passed as the parameter here, whilst calling the function. So while we define a function, we also choose to receive a parameter, and then when we call it, we receive a parameter. Now, what if we don't pass in name? What happens when we don't? When we call the function without a name, what happens? It now says hello undefined. Welcome to the restaurant. Now, undefined. What this means is that initially we are defining name, or we are saving the value being sent here to name. So if the value is being sent, name is now undefined. You understand? So undefined is when there's a variable name but no value inside. So if I say const nothing, right? For example, const nothing, and I don't, sorry, or let me say all values now. Okay, I'll say console.log instead of the greeting. For let me just show you how undefined works. So console.log um nothing, right? Nothing. You can see this nothing. So when I go back to my code and I refresh, you can see it says nothing is not defined. So nothing right now has a value of undefined, right? So when we call a variable name that is not being defined, we get undefined. So when we don't pass a variable to the function call, this definition does not happen, and so by default, name is now undefined. You understand? So, but if a variable is passed, right, while calling the function, it will say behind the scene, it will say let name equal to Israel, and then it will not put name here. But if name is not passed, it won't run that function that says let name equal to Israel. It just put name here. So we'll now see undefined in the screen on our console. All right, so we have to put Israel. Now, this function is not complete yet. Why? Because there might be a place in our code where we call this say hello, but without a name. Without a name. Now, in a restaurant, let's say we have some regular customers and some are not regular. So the regular customers, when they come in, we already know their name. So we can say, hello, Mr. Israel. Hello, Mr. Daniel. Hello, Mr. Joshua. Right? Hello, Mr. Toby. Because we've seen you before in the past. Same thing as in the church. When you walk in, the usher will greet you, say, good morning, happy Sunday, Mr. Festus, happy Sunday, Mr. Israel. Why? Because they already know you. But if you're coming for the first time, we don't know you yet until they call out first timers and you tell us your name. But before then, we don't know your name yet. So all we say is hello, welcome to church. Now, we want our function to only say hello, the user's name, if there is a name being passed. So I can say here, if name, right? If name. So I will say let's greeting. So I will delete this. So the greeting by default, it is hello, welcome to the restaurant. But if there's a name, then I want the greeting to be hello, the person's name, and then welcome to the restaurant, right? And then after everything, I want to now log greeting. Sorry, I want to log greeting. All right. So let's look at this function and how it works. The function is called say hello, and it may receive a parameter called name. Now, the greeting is hello, welcome to the restaurant by default. But if there is a name, so this first code we run, it will save this string to with the name of greeting. Right. So after that, the next thing that will happen is that it will now check if a name was passed to the function call. If a name was passed, it will now redefine greeting. Sorry. It's redefinement, so we don't need to put let's or anything. It's not redefining, it's now saying greeting is no longer hello, welcome to our church, to our restaurant rather. Greeting is now hello, the person's name, and then welcome to the restaurant. Why? Because name was passed. So when we console log this, it either logs this one or this one, depending on this condition. You understand? So I will say hello twice. The second one, I will pass nothing to it. Right? I will pass nothing to it. So if I open my browser and I refresh now, we now see two greetings. The first one says, hello, Israel, welcome to the restaurant. Second one just says, hello, welcome to the restaurant. Now, it says Israel because name was passed. This one doesn't say Israel because no name was passed. You understand? So, what this means is that this person is coming for the first time, while this person is already a known customer. So now our function is now well grounded because previously we're saying hello undefined, and we don't want our users to be saying undefined. Imagine if you enter a church or a restaurant for the first time, and the usher or the gateman now says hello undefined, welcome to our restaurant. You will feel somehow, right? That's not a normal experience. That is not something that happens very often. It will be weird to you that you are being called undefined. So it will be better if they just say hello, welcome to the restaurant, if they don't know your name. And that is what we have done here. So this is how functions work. Now, let us come and use functions to replace some of our implementation in our code here. Instead of just using if and else repeatedly, let's write a function, right? Let's write a function that receives, what's it called? The function will receive, um, it will receive, so let's write a function that receives a, a payment, right? It receives a payment. First of all, we write a function for adding to table of 2, another one for table of 4, another one for table of 8, right? So that way, whenever, okay, no, that's not reusable. So instead, what we do instead, we write a function that receives a payment, right? It receives a payment and then if the it checks if even that is not reusable. Let's think of this way. We want to write a function that we can reuse in our code, right? We can reuse in our code. So let us see. How do we go about this now? We want our function reusable. Okay, so what we'll do instead, you can see how we are writing this block of code here. This code, all it does is that it books our table, or it informs us of the table we are booking, and then it adds to it, right? This second one as well, what it does is that it informs us of the table we are booking, and it adds to it. You understand? So what if we can write a function that receives um what if we can write a function that receives one of these, and then it checks which one it is, right? It checks which one it is. It checks if the payment is for table of two, or the payment is for table of four, or the payment is for table of eight, and then it runs the code appropriately. Let's try and do that, right? So we'll say um, we'll call function handle booking. And what it will take? It will take table type, table type, right? So now we have table type. This is a good time to show you how to use switch and case. But in fact, let's just use our usual if and else. So if table type is table of two, then we'll log we have booked for table of two, and then we'll add reserve tables table of two plus plus. So I'll write another else if, and then I'll write the other one. All right, this is correct. For table of eight, I'm using the auto suggest to make it faster for us because our time is fast spent. And then the last one. Right. So let's have it like this. So if the table type we pass is table of two, this code will run for table of two. If it is for table of four, this code will run. If it is for table of eight, this code will run. If we didn't pass any table, then this code will run. You understand? So now let's call this function in our while loop. So how it will work now is that, let me copy the function first of all, handle booking. I will comment all of this below to save us scrolling space. So these are function handle booking. So let's uncomment our while loop and have it active again here. So now what we'll do is that if it is table of two, sorry, let me put the function above. Now, this function has to be above because if it is below, then this will happen first before the function. But we want the function to be used in the while loop. So we have to put the function above the while loop, right? So if it's below it, the while will run before we even define the function. But this way, it is defined first, so we cannot use it here, right? So if this happens, we want to delete everything here. If it's for table of two, we want to delete it, and then we want to call our function of handle booking and pass table of two as the parameter. You understand? As the parameter. Same thing here. I want to delete this code and run handle booking. I want to pass table of four as the parameter. And then for table of eight, we want to remove the first two because this one is not handled by our function. Sorry. And add in, sorry. And add in handle booking, table of eight. So here as well, we want to call handle booking. But since it is not for any booking, we'll just pass in wrong table. Right? Wrong table. Awesome. So now you can see how the code is cleaner. Instead of 3 lines, we now have just 2 lines of code. Instead of 3 lines, we now have just 2 lines of code. We can even go one step forward. We can go one step forward, right? And in this function, we add this book purpose in the function. So whenever it is table of two, what do? We use this. Sorry. Right, we add book tables. If it's table of two, we increase the book tables. If it is table of four, same thing. If it is table of eight, same thing. But for this, we'll not add that. So now what happens now is that we can now delete this one as well. So the function just handles everything. So now with this, our code now looks way cleaner. You can see it now looks way cleaner. Right? It looks way cleaner. As a matter of fact, it can even go cleaner than this, but I'll leave it like this for now. We can make it a bit more cleaner, but I'll leave this for now. Let us test it. Remember how I said that when you are adding new features, add one thing and then test it so you know that it's working before you create the next one. Right? Because now if you have errors, you know where exactly it's coming from. Right? Imagine if you just write the whole thing without testing. You can see some errors, you know which one is giving you the errors. So now we have our code here. Let us see how all of this works. Let's see how it works. Right. Um, so after handle booking, I want to log the booked tables. So this one as well, I'll remove and put in a function. Right. So when the function, every time the function runs, after it has run, we will now have, we'll now see the number of tables we have. So let's go back to our browser and refresh our page and see. So the first one, I would say 100,000. Second one, I would say 200. Third one, I would say 150. Fourth one, I would say 150. 150,000. Right. Fifth one, I would say 140, which is wrong. Right. So it still continues going. Then I'll now add another 100. I'll add another 300. Now we have an infinite loop. As you can see here, we've done it more than 5 times, but for some reason, it has see this is first implementation, second one, there's 2 years, so third and fourth is here. We have fifth, sixth, and seventh, and we still have our loop going on. Now we have landed ourselves in our infinite loop. So let us now see. Now, the only reason why my laptop is not hot and switching off is because this loop has a prompt here. So if let's say if we're just logging a number to the console, my system would have shut down already. But because we have this prompt is slowing down the loop for us. So until I add something here, right, the loop won't keep going on. You understand? But imagine if it was a code where I don't need to type anything. I just need to keep running it by itself. I'll be finished already. Right. So let's go to our code and see what is wrong. Now we are calling book tables, number of book tables, and upon every call, or rather, upon every um, table bookment, right, we are modifying book tables. What could possibly be wrong here? What could possibly be wrong here? So when this happens, it adds. When this happens, it adds. When this happens, it adds. So this should have increased. In fact, let me see. So we have book table of 8, reserve tables, book tables. Even this was not running as well. This one as well was not even running. Let me look at the code again and see the outputs. Yes, it was not running. So if this is not running, then something is wrong because it should be running every time. It should be running every time. After the if and else has run, then this should not run. If it's not running, then maybe our code was not properly rendered. So what I'll do is that I'll just copy this link. This is another way to exit a loop. If you exit fast enough, I can just close the tab and it is gone. All right, so I can open it in a new tab, and then I'll open my console so we can see. So if we don't see this console.log happening, then something is not right. All right, so let's go and see what we have. 100,000. Okay, it's not even logging to the console. All right, so I will close that as well. I will close this as well, and then go back to our code and see what could be wrong. Now, first thing I will do is I'll bring out, you know what, for table of two, let's use the old implementation. Let's say if it's something about the way we call our function. So this table of two, I'll paste this back here. So we're running it the good old way, right? So let us see how this comes out. Let us see how this comes out. I'll open the FSM project again. Right, so let's open our console and F12. Let's refresh the page. Did the page refresh? Hopefully it did. Okay, let's go again. Let's see 100,000. It is not logging to the console, and that is a problem. So what I'll do now is that I'll comment out the while loop first, so it doesn't run at first when the code mounts. All right, so I'll copy this tag and paste it in. I want the code fn f12. Okay, so our JavaScript has now mounted properly. Now let's uncomment that code and see what happens. Let's uncomment the while loop and see what happens. Uncommented. So I will refresh and let us see what's happened now for 200,000. You have booked table for two. You have booked table for two. Okay. Now let's add another one and see. Let's say 150. This one uses the function. We have booked table for four, and it still did not log our console. But let's go on. Let's consume it with table for two and see. So 200,000. Third time. Fourth time. Fifth time. So we now have 5 tables booked, but one of them is table for four. Let's see one more time with our legacy code. 200,000. And it cancelled. Now, let's remove our function call. This function call, let's remove it from inside our code, right? Let's take it off from here. So I'll come here, I'll remove this line. So we control this line only inside the while loop. So what I'll do is I'll come here and add the line back. All right. So let us test our code and see how it performs. So the handle booking only handles adding the tables and logging it. All right. So in fact, I'll come here back and add this log to it. Let's replace this back handle Okay. Table for two. Okay. Um, let's add this log. Let's add this log into all of them. Okay. So let us then see how this works. I'll refresh the page. And then the first one, let's say 200. Enter. Table for two. I can't see my log. 150,000. Can't see my log still. Okay. That's fine. Um, let's see table for eight, which is 100,000. I'll load a table for these three now, right? We have three tables now. Okay. Then I'll say 150 again. This is four, and then I'll say 200. All right. So it's did log. However, we cannot see this our log reserve tables. We can't see reserve tables being logged, which is a we can't see where is it reserve tables. Okay, I didn't add it to the function. I add it to the function call. So let me also copy this. Let us see. So it still did not happen inside of here. I'm not sure. Let's make this the last thing we do. That was to we're calling the function here, handle booking table of two. Book table for two. Okay. So I'll bring this above the increment. There's no reason why it should not be working. So this is the kind of errors we face, right? When we are writing code. Stuff like this at times we are not sure exactly why. So we have to find out a solution for it, right? So we have to find solution for it. So let me examine this one more time and see. Okay, reserve tables. Okay, so instead of here, let's have it after each iteration of our loop. All right, so after each iteration of loop, at the bottom here, we'll log the table, right? And then we'll see what it looks like. Because this function already adds to it. So in book tables plus plus. Okay, let us see how this goes now. We have to refresh the code. And then 200. So we now have it been logged. You can see exact table has been logged here. 150, 100, 200. Right, so we have four tables now, and then 150,000. So we have five now, and then we are having the tables being logged. Right. So we have our tables being logged now. We have everything been logged appropriately. Now for our function, as to why it was not, let me say handle booking. Handle booking. Handle booking. We have two handle booking. Why do we have two handle booking? So let me remove the one below. It's probably redefining. It's probably redefining the function for us. This could very well be the issue. So just to be sure, I'll copy this and then revert the changes. I'll revert the changes to the first iteration because that could be the issue. I didn't see that earlier. So I'll come here and we say handle booking, table of two. Okay, so also I'll comment this one out just to be sure. Because now we have this function here, we have this one here, and then we had the first one I wrote. I moved it up. So it's the same name. So this function can be overwriting this function. The same way we have um the same way we have book trades here like this, or number of or book trades here, and then we are reassigning we are changing the value here inside here. That's the same way we have this function here like this. This one runs, and then the function now changes. That could very well be the problem. So let us go back and see if this function now runs as we want it to run. All right, let's see now. I'll go back to the console. I will refresh, and then when I say 200,000, so it is working well. You can now see exact tables here. Right, 1,000. When I say 120, which is the wrong one, I see you have been table. You have booked the wrong table. So when I say 150 again, table for four. When I use 100, table for eight. So we have three tables now. So when I use 200,000 for four, and then I'll have another wrong one to be refunded shortly. Okay. Then I have 150 again. And it has stopped. So our function, the one I wrote the first time, it worked perfectly, but I forgot to remove the old one. So I wrote it here first. Then I said, okay, let me move it up. Because if I don't move it up, it will show undefined, right? Because now we are calling a function that haven't been defined yet. So I moved it up, but I forgot to remove the one I wrote at first. So how it happens was that when the browser was loading JavaScript, it saved this function, right? It saved this one. Then it now came back to save this one. So while saving this function, since it is the same name, it now removed everything inside this block and saved the one in this block. So the one in this block, it was not logging the aftermath. You can see here, sorry, you can see here, after we add to a table, sorry, let me go up. After we add to a table, at the end, we are logging the tables, right? But in this particular function here, we're not logging the tables. You understand? So this is what was causing that error where it was not performing like it should. You understand? So this is also why the this increment here was also not working. And this is why we got into an infinite loop. Because this function was adding one to book tables. What that means is that book tables now increase up until it reaches 5 and stop. But the one below here was not adding one to the code. You understand? So what ended up happening was that this function below, this function definition, it now replaced this one. And that's why we're now having those wrong behaviors. So remember, if you move your code, whether from up to down or from down to up, remember to delete one of them. We shouldn't have two functions with the same name on one file. So now that is how we run function calls. That is how we run function calls. So we probably have to stop here for now. We have done a lot. We have done a lot, to be honest. We have done a lot, right? So, but I will give you an assignment, right? So this code, it will be provided to you guys. This code I will send to you guys today. All right, I will share with you guys today. Our day 6 was supposed to be for a special project, but we might have to schedule that for another day, meaning that most likely, moderator, are you hearing me? Most likely, we might have one extra day for that project alone. All right. So, on our next class, we'll talk more on JavaScript, on array methods, on how to add JavaScript to HTML, or how to add it. Now, you can see our code right now. When it runs, when we refresh this page, the JavaScript starts automatically. But what if we want to only start when a user clicks on make payment? So I don't want this stuff, this payment model to come up every time the page loads. No, I want it to come up only when a user clicks a button to say make payment. Right. So I want it to be controlled by JavaScript only. You understand? So in that case, we need to link the JavaScript to a button. So how to go about all of those is what we'll treat in the next class, right? But this class, we use this class to gain more knowledge about control flows, how to write loops properly, right? How to avoid infinite loops. You understand? How to write functions, right? That is what this class is focused on, and that's a very very big part of programming as well. That's in fact control flow and functions are part of are like are like some of the things you write every day in programming. Even today at work, I still wrote a function at work today, right? I still end up writing a function. So we write functions every day. We write if and else every day. Right. So what we did just now was a decent chunk of learning, and I hope you guys understood properly. Right. So come back Wednesday, and we'll move further into array types or array methods rather, and DOM operations. Right. Array methods, DOM operations, and then we can move to building a functional website on our project day. So thank you very much. Moderator, are you there? Do you guys have any questions on what we treated today? Any parts you don't understand, I said how to explain. So drop your question, um, drop your question on the chat box, and I'll be here to attend to them during the time we still have on this call. I'll be waiting for you guys. I'm here. I'm also in the chat as well. If you have any questions or anything you wish for me to clarify, you can um, type it in chat box so I can handle it before the next class. Thank you very much. Okay, no questions for today. Thank you all for joining the call. Mr. Festus, are you with us? Moderator? Hello, Moderator, are you with us? All right, so you guys, I will share my um the code we wrote today. In fact, I'll share okay, not everything. Okay, I'll share everything. So I will share the code we wrote today, and you can add it. Remember how to run this on the browser. You have to link it to HTML. So come here, write a script tag like this. I added this part to what's it called? To the PDF document I sent after the last class. So you have to use this script tag. Let this source point to the name of your JavaScript code file. Right. So my own is app.js. So I type app.js here. And then when I go to my browser, right, I can see, sorry, right. I can see my code running here. Right. So you can see the HTML is loaded. The HTML is still here, but the JavaScript is running on the console. Now, if you don't know how to open this console, in case you're not sure how, you can right click on your browser, click on inspect. It will open something like this for you, and then find console. Find console here. Console is where the JavaScript is running, right? So that's how you can get the JavaScript or how to load it. So I'll be pasting my code on the dev group chat now. So this is the 5. So up next, we will go into we'll go into DOM operation. DOM operation is just how we use JavaScript to work with HTML. Right now, all we're doing is just loading JavaScript. Our JavaScript is not affecting our UI, it's not affecting our website, it's just there to load. So on our next class, we'll see how to load it. We'll see how to use array methods. Right? Those two alone are very, very, and we'll also see how to use JavaScript to add HTML to our page. Right. So what I'll do here is that I'll remove this styling here so we can see our website again. All right. So let me do that and come here to our page. I have to refresh. Let me console. Let me log out the JavaScript. Log the JavaScript out. All right. So what I mean is that in our last class a we wrote a bio. No, I think that was in our second class. We created this bio. Now this bio. Okay, in our last class we created an object, a bio object, right? In that bio object, we have all of this here: introduction, hobbies, right? And then we have this is an array. So in our next class, we'll see how to use JavaScript to put this inside of here. Instead of writing it, you can see here we're using HTML to write our name and everything. But in our next class, we'll see how to put it in JavaScript, right? How to put it in JavaScript so that in case someone else's objects want to be used, we won't have to write something else again for someone else. The objects will just replace it. So we set to post this content into this place with JavaScript, how to render this list here with JavaScript as well, and how to make a payment. Let's say these are bio, and from our index page or rather anywhere we want to make a payment. We'll see how to create that as well. You understand? So that's what to focus on the next class. Thank you very much. This brings us to the end of our class for today. I appreciate your patience throughout the course of um, this program. I'm not be the best teacher, but hopefully you have been able to understand what I'm teaching so far. Thank you very much once again. So this brings us to the end of the call. I'll be heading out now. Mr. Festus, are you here? We're ending the we're ending the live call now.
Yes, I am here, sir, bro. Israel, well done.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much. Yeah. Are we through for tonight?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you very much, brother Israel. Thank you everyone for participating tonight. And practice make perfect. I trust the Lord to grant everyone quick understanding and wisdom. I would just like to reiterate this, that the essence of this training is so that we get to, help others to gain visibility. So we are being helped to help others. So while you are learning HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, is to the end that God can use you to make His work popular, helping mission organizations and missionaries who do not have the visibility to have the visibility, hence gaining support as they should, and also raising workforce. Because when people come across their work, read about it, they get encouraged and actually want to do what God would want them to do, discipling the nations. So this is God recruiting each and every one of us, participating in the training into His workforce, not just to save the nations, but to also raise more men. So I pray that the Lord will breathe upon our hearts and grant us extraordinary strength, strength of mind, strength of will, and we will get extraordinary results in Jesus' name. And I also pray for our facilitator, Brother Israel. Great grace to you, strength to your inner man, and the light of the Lord, his countenance will beam upon you in the name of Jesus. Thank you, everyone.
Amen.
God bless you. So, next class is on Wednesday, right? Let's do well to practice.
Yes, or Wednesday.
Yes, let's do well to practice. We are getting to the end of the course, but not the end of your learning. So for those of us who have been consistent, there will be room for mentorship, coaching, and for projects to work on. And yeah, I cannot oversize that it's going to be to your benefit. God bless you. Do well to have a good night. See you on the group. Bye.